While most people don't have much contact with wild animals, aside from their pets or occasional sightings in nature, Tansy Espinal had the extraordinary experience of growing up alongside gorillas. Her parents ran a rehabilitation facility that helped captive gorillas transition back into the wild, and Tansy spent much of her childhood playing and bonding with these incredible creatures. She always hoped that one day, when she returned to visit, the gorillas would remember her. The facility, founded by Tansy's father, Tansy Espinal, was dedicated to rehabilitating gorillas that had been rescued from captivity or from traumatic situations, with the goal of eventually releasing them into the wild. Tansy grew up in this environment, with the gorillas as part of her everyday life. Despite the inherent risks in working with wild animals, Tansy's father ensured that she was taught how to safely interact with the gorillas, which led to deep emotional bonds between them. Tansy viewed these gorillas not just as animals but as friends, and their connection was clear. Over the years, the facility successfully rehabilitated several gorillas, including Jalta and Bims, two gorillas who had been rescued from captivity. After extensive rehabilitation, Jalta and Bims were deemed ready for release into their natural habitat in Gabon, a country known for its lush forests and gorilla populations. It was a bittersweet moment for Tansy and her father, as they knew the gorillas had to be released to ensure their long-term survival, but saying goodbye was difficult after having spent so many years together. Fast forward to when Tansy was 25 years old. She decided to return to Gabon to visit the gorillas she had grown up with, especially Jalta and Bims, who she hadn't seen in over a decade. With her father's encouragement and support, Tansy made the journey back to the lush jungles of Gabon, where the gorillas had been released. Tansy Espinal, well-versed in gorilla rehabilitation, guided her on how to reconnect with the animals, and she felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness as she prepared for the reunion.
Upon meeting Jalta and Bims, Tansy was apprehensive about whether the gorillas would recognize her after all these years. However, her worries were quickly dispelled when the two gorillas approached her. Jalta and Bims ran towards her, their eyes full of excitement and affection, as if no time had passed. Tansy was overwhelmed with emotion, realizing that the bond they had formed years earlier still remained. The reunion was not just a personal joy for Tansy but also a testament to the deep intelligence and memory of these majestic animals. After spending several days with the gorillas, Tansy reluctantly said goodbye, knowing she might never see them again. As much as she had longed to reunite with them, she understood that the wild was where they belonged. However, little did she know that just a few months later, a tragedy would unfold that would change everything. The gorillas were tracked with radio transmitters, and news soon came that Jalta and Bims were missing. Their disappearance was a devastating blow to Tansy, and the situation grew even more tragic when their bodies were eventually discovered. In addition to Jalta and Bims, other gorillas from the same group were found dead, leaving Tansy and her father heartbroken. The cause of death was later determined to be the actions of a silverback gorilla named Bumanga. Bumanga had been rescued from a cruel captivity situation earlier in his life, and his experiences had left him scarred. Unfortunately, his violent behavior, likely a result of the abuse he suffered, caused significant harm to the other gorillas in the area, including Jalta and Bims. The news that Bumanga, a silverback with a troubled past, was responsible for the deaths of the rehabilitated gorillas sent shockwaves through the rehabilitation community. Tansy and her father had always feared that Bumanga's unpredictable nature would pose a threat to the other gorillas in the wild. The trauma he had endured seemed to have turned him into a dangerous figure who disrupted the delicate balance in the wild gorilla population. This raised difficult questions for Tansy and her father about how to handle such cases in the future. The tragic loss of the gorillas brought Tansy and her father to a difficult crossroads. They began to question whether their methods of releasing entire gorilla families into the wild at once were the best approach. The risks of reintroducing animals with violent tendencies like Bumanga had become all too clear. With the tragic deaths of Jalta and Bims, the Espinals realized that more careful consideration was needed when determining how to handle the release of rehabilitated gorillas. The safety of both the gorillas and the surrounding environment had to be prioritized. This tragedy led Tansy and her father to rethink their approach to gorilla rehabilitation. They began to explore alternative strategies that would involve more individualized assessments and ensure that gorillas with violent tendencies would not disrupt the peaceful populations in the wild. The heartbreaking experience has changed how they view the challenges of rehabilitating and releasing gorillas into the wild. While they are still dedicated to the cause, they now understand that the complexity of reintroducing rehabilitated gorillas is fraught with unforeseen dangers, and they continue to search for solutions to better protect the animals they work so hard to save.